This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We'll be going back to the issue of Afghanistan after this interview. But Augusto Boal, the legendary Brazilian political playwright and popular educator, died this weekend at the age of 78. He was the founder of the Theater of the Oppressed, a popular international movement for a participatory form of theater as a means of promoting knowledge and democratic forms of interaction. Boal conducted workshops all over the world. His techniques of using theater to discuss power and oppression have been widely inspirational and influential. In 1971, the Brazilian military dictatorship imprisoned and tortured Boal for 4 months. After his release, he was forced into exile for 15 years. He's written a number of books, including Theater of the Oppressed and Games for Actors and Non-Actors, as well as The Rainbow of Desire and Legislative Theater. In the 90s, Boal also served as a city council member for Rio de Janeiro. Boal was tireless till the end of his life, according to a statement from the Center for the Theater of the Oppressed in Rio. Boal left behind a completed new version of his book, The Aesthetics of the Oppressed, and he spent the day before his death, May Day, in a solidarity vigil with workers. Later this month, Augusto Boal's son, Julian Boal, will be in New York leading workshops at the Brecht Forum on the techniques developed by his father and performing them at Riverside Church on May 25th. I interviewed Augusto Boal here in the Firehouse studio in June of 2007. This interview we never aired before. I began by asking him to describe the Theater of the Oppressed.
Theater of the Oppressed is theater in what it is more essential. It is not theater in a playhouse, not theater with written scripts, not theater like some theaters become the cemetery of theater, because theater is what we have inside. We are animals that have the privilege of being actors because we are acting all of the time, but at the same time we are spectators of our actions. Most animals, almost none of them, only some dolphins, some elephants, some I don't know what, can do that, can observe themselves in action. So we have theater inside because we act and we are the observer, we are the spectators. At the same time, when we get together, many people looking at one point, they create a space which is different from the physical space. It's more than a physical space. It is pentadimensional, not three-dimensional. It has also memory and imagination. So we create the theatricality. And third, we use the language that the actors use on the stage. So there is no difference when we are in love with someone, we talk differently than if we hate a person, we don't talk in the same way. So we do exactly what the actor does on the stage, but the actor has the conscience of that, and we don't have it in normal life, in daily life.
What do you mean we? Who is we?
It's all of us. It's any people, but especially for, in our case, the oppressed. We believe that all relationship between humans should be a dialogue on nature. We should have the moment in which we listen to the other and the moment in which we speak. But we know that between men and women, between blacks and whites, between North Hemisphere countries and South Hemisphere, all those dialogues, they become very soon a monologue in which only men speak, only whites speak, only the North Hemisphere speak, and then we want to reestablish the dialogue. We want to have the right also to say our words. So that's what we mean us, the oppressed. Be it oppressed, sexually oppressed, be salary oppressed, be politically oppressed, any kind of oppression we fight against.
Talk about what inspired you, Augusto, how you founded the Theater of the Oppressed.
Well, always I was very much preoccupied with that because my father, he was had a bakery, and sometimes when in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in the working quarters of Rio, and then every morning that I went to work with my father when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and then I saw all those workers, and I saw how they were oppressed, and always I was preoccupied with them. I was fascinated by how could they not rebel if they were so oppressed. And then my beginning, it was at 15 years old, I started writing plays about them. And I was in a moment in which I thought that as I was not oppressed as their oppression, I was not in the same circumstance, and I was pretending to be an artist, I was superior in some way. And then I said, well, I'm going to teach them what they have to do to fight. So I entered in the line of the political theater of the 50s, of the 60s, in which they had messages to give. And one day I learned that I did not know more than they did unless in the theater. In the theater, yes, I knew more, but their lives, they knew more than I. And it happened one day when I was working for peasants in the northeast of Brazil, and I was doing a play in which the protagonist said, at the end said, we have to spill our blood to save our land. And then we were all singing, dressed like peasants. We were not peasants, looking like peasants, but we were not peasants, and saying you have to spill your blood, our blood to save our lands, to reconquist our. And then a peasant came to us and says, well, you think exactly like we do. So why don't you take your rifles, because we had rifles on stage, very beautiful, colorful rifles, and said, why don't you come with your rifles and let's go to fight against some landowners that occupied our land. We have to spill our blood. And then we said, forgive us, but our rifles, they are not true. They are fake. They are setting rifles. And he said, okay, the rifles are not true. They are not real rifles, but you are sincere. So you come because we have rifles for everybody. Let's fight against them. And then we said, no, we are truly artists and not truly peasants. And he said, when truly artists say, let's spill our blood, you are talking about our true blood of truly peasants and not about yours. So I understood that we could not give message to women because we are men, to blacks because we are white, to peasants because we live in a city, but we can help them to find their own ways of fighting.
Augusto Boal, you yourself were imprisoned. When? By whom?
It was in 71. Exactly because in the beginning of the Theatre of the Press, we were doing the first form, which was called newspaper theatre, in which we as we had been persecuted by the police, by the paramilitary organizations, and persecuted really, not, we were not paranoid, but sometimes we had to go on the stage with a loaded gun in our pockets, and it was not paranoia, it was self-defense. And so the situation was so terrible. To do theater was such a risk always, to do the kind of theater in favor of the population and against the dictatorships. It was so terrible that we had to take that protection. And then, during that time, they were arresting people, killing people, torturing people, and I was one of them that were arrested, and happily I'm alive.
How did that experience change your view also of theater?
In some way, it had been changed before with this episode in which I found that I was giving advice to someone, but I was not able to take the same risks. Che Guevara used to say something very beautiful. He said, to be solidary is to take the same risks. And I was not taking any risk. I went there, I did the play, and then go and fight, and I take the plane back home. So my had already changed. But at the same time, to be in a solitary cell, to be alone there, not talking to anybody anytime, and most of the time not seeing anybody, made me, for the first time in my life, to listen to silence. I had never listened to silence. I listened to sounds, but I listened to sounds. And then in that moment, I learned that in this moment of the silence, your thoughts, they become more concrete, almost objects. And then when I was moved from this cell to a cell with many other prisoners, political prisoners, I learned something very important also, that when we are free in space, we are arrested in time. We have to go look at the watch, it's what time, we have to go here, we have to go there. We are arrested in time. And when we are arrested in space, we have the free time.